transport. All right. So thank you very much. There's going to be some cool prizes that you can win after these seminars. So there's this one that we're going to start out with this evening. And then we have one next Wednesday as well. My name's Nanita Bloomquist. I'm going to introduce myself in a couple slides here as well. But there's some really cool swag that you can win following that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end of the seminar as well. If you have any questions, this is a really interactive presentation, so feel free to, if you're not comfortable with waving your hand on the screen or chatting, just type it into the chat box. If you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to stop me and ask your questions, and I will try my best to answer them. All right. Oh, and then my buttons aren't working. There we go. Now I got to just move my chat down. So I'll try and keep an eye on this. I usually have someone monitoring that, but we'll manage it tonight here. So who am I? My name's Nanita Bloomquist. I'm the education manager with Agriculture for Life. We work with partners like Nutrien and other global partners, and that's to help bring agriculture into classrooms. So I'm the education manager there. I'm also a teacher, and I'm a 4th generation farmer here in central Alberta as well. And I have 2 kiddos that are in 4-H in our local club here as well. So I'm also a 4-H club leader. So I'm really happy to be doing this and sharing this with all of you 4-H members. It's really exciting for me to be participating in this. Whoops, and there go my buttons again. Oh, it's really not liking me. Oh, that's why. There we go. So this whole program, Journey 2050, is focused on this one big question, right? It's focused on how are we going to sustainably feed nearly 10 billion people by the year 2050. So this is the big question, and sometimes when we think about it, it's hard to really imagine that. But we don't want to just feed the world. We want to make sure that we're feeding the world sustainably. And so what does sustainability mean? It's a big question. It's probably kind of a buzzword that you've heard out and about, and everybody has sometimes a different definition about it. But we want to be able to feed the world in 2050, not just in the year 2050, but beyond 2050, right? We want to continue to feed the world. So the goal, obviously, is that we can feed the world, obviously in a way that's profitable. Nobody wants to work for free, right? So we want to be able to feed the world in a profitable way, but also in a way that is supporting a really healthy quality of life and protecting our land at the same time, and not only our land, but our air and our water. So back in the early 1900s, a North American farmer would have produced enough food to feed 10 people. So in today's world, our farmers today, they are feeding over 120 people. But tomorrow's farmer that's going to be feeding these people in that year 2050, they're going to have to feed even more. So this is what this whole presentation is going to talk about, and how are we going to do this? And we need you guys, your bright young minds, to help us do that. So by 2050, we're going to talk a little bit about that year and the significance. But tomorrow's farmer is going to have to put together everything that they've known and all through the years, and the equivalent of all that food grown in the last 500 years put together, right? Oh, let's just make sure I'm not admitting anybody. So it's a lot to think about and how we're going to do that. Whoops. There we go. So I'm going to show you a video here that's going to give you a brief introduction. But what I want you to do is I want you to think about 3 things when you're watching the video, okay? Think about why have we picked the year 2050? Like, where does the year 2050 come from? I want you to think about what is a sustainability barrel, because that's going to become important when we play the game. And I want you to think about what is a ripple effect, okay? So those are 3 things I want you to think about as we watch this video. And if the video doesn't show, please somebody let me know. And
I can't. It's your off of it. It's over there. And I'm in you. I don't need you to sit with me.
What will our world be like in the year 2050? By 2050, the Earth will be crowded by 2 billion more people. They're all going to need water, homes, jobs, and medicines. But most importantly, how are they all going to be fed? This growing population will eat the equivalent to all of the food grown in the last 500 years put together. That's over 60% more than we grow today. 1 billion tons more cereal and 50% more fresh water every year. This extra food has to be grown on less land in a way that protects the environment and animals, while making sure that there's enough food for generations to come. This is called sustainability, and it can only be achieved by improving its 3 interconnected elements: economy, society, and environment. Let me show you what we mean. Imagine a barrel with parts made equally from these 3 elements. Well, you can only fill this barrel until its lowest piece. So if the environment is the lowest piece of the barrel, it limits the sustainability. This piece must be improved to make the world's sustainability greater. What does economic mean here? It's about earning money, creating jobs and incomes to support the national and local community. Then there are the social needs. People need things like food, education, and medical care to stay healthy. We also need infrastructure like roads to get the food from the farm to your plate. And finally, there are environmental needs. Soil quality needs need to be maintained. Habitats need protection. Water must be conserved. And we need to protect our atmosphere by keeping our greenhouse gases to a minimum. Our world leaders committed to 17 global goals in the United Nations. Sustainable agriculture is key to creating a stronger 2050 for our people and our planet. Okay, let me introduce you to the ripple effect. The planting of a single seed creates a ripple effect that helps a farmer's family, their community, country, and ultimately the world. The more farmers grow and sell, the more they have to spend on seeds, machinery, and fertilizer to produce even more food and fiber. Income that's spent locally is invested in the local community, providing education, medical care, infrastructure, and protecting the environment. If farmers around the world start a ripple, it can improve global economies and help billions rise from poverty. Different farmers raise different crops and animals according to their local soil, climate, technology, and markets, but they all have one thing in common. They love agriculture. On our journey to the year 2050, you'll hear from farm families around the world who are growing food sustainably. First, meet the Olus. They own a small farm in Kenya, East Africa. Then meet the Singhs, who live in India, where multiple generations farm together. Next, we'll fly across the Atlantic to meet the Magins. They're a 3-generation farming family from central Alberta, Canada. Finally, we'll meet the Van Lobensells. They are a 6th-generation farming family in the United States. They grow various commodities in California. These families and agriculture experts will be giving you advice on what we call best management practices so that we can grow more with less, protecting the environment, building stronger communities, and feed the 2 billion more people on our planet. Hey, it's a long journey ahead, but even the longest journey starts with a single step forward. So come on, take it now and join us on our journey to 2050.
Okay. Let me go back. All right. So I hope you guys got those answers, right? So why was it 2050? Why was it the year 2050 so important? You can feel free to type in as well. Type in the chat. What was so important about the year 2050? Does anybody remember? We're a quiet group tonight. That's okay. So 2050 is the year that, yeah, exactly. This is the year that the population is going to increase, where scientists predicted and world leaders predicted that we'd reach that 10 billion people mark, right? So we're going to be over 2 billion people more than we are today. Let me just see here. Hogan.
I'm sorry, I was gonna try to answer.
Oh, sorry, I missed. That's okay. I've got lots more.
The chat was just too slow for me.
Okay. Yeah, and feel free to show the answers out as I go. We're really casual, so it's all good. Awesome. Yeah, so that's the big year, right? Is kind of what they predicted as our population continues to increase. So in order though, whoops, now bear with me. In order to do this, like how many more years until we reach 2050? This is where your math skills are going to come out. How many years? 26, that's right. So how old are you going to be? You kind of think about, well, how old are you going to be then in 2050? You guys are all going to be like adults, right? So you guys
I'll be like 36.
You'll be, see, yeah. And you'll be the ones that are going to be influencing all of the decisions that are happening and making those decisions at the grocery store and from what's being taught in schools and to what you're buying. So you guys will be the important people that are making these decisions, right? So in order to do this, well, there it goes. Again, I mentioned we're going to be over 10 billion. So we're about 8 billion today. So we have 2 billion more people to feed. To do that, scientists predict we're going to need to grow 60 to 70% more food than what we're growing today. And as you can see on the screen, it says on the same amount of land or less, right? We can't really increase the amount of arable land in the world. We can do some innovative things like we're seeing nowadays with cubic farms and vertical farms and things like that. But ultimately, we're still going to be having the same amount or less arable land. So how are we going to do this? Grow 60 to 70% more food than we are, but do it in a sustainable manner as well, right? So there's going to be a lot of pressure for farmers to increase, decrease, stay the same. It's going to be to increase that, right? So how do we do this, right? So there's going to be that increased pressure. Sorry, I answered this question already. An increased pressure on our resources. So yes, you got a question? Yeah.
What do farmers do in the winter?
What do farmers do in the winter? That's an excellent question. So here in Canada, where we have our winter season, our cold season, where we're not able to grow crops because of the weather, they are doing a lot of things like they're moving the crops that they've grown and they're moving that to elevators. They're planning for their next season. And they're doing a lot of prep work over the winter months to get ready for, because we technically have a very short growing season here in Canada. So there's a lot of work that they do over the winter months that gets them prepared for our growing season. And that's as well as maintenance to their equipment and making sure everything's up to date throughout the winter months. Great question.
All right, thank you.
Oops. So in order to feed 2 billion more people, we're going to have an increased need for water, more homes, more jobs, medicine, food, everything. There's going to be an increased need for all of this, right? And so who's going to provide these resources, right? So it's essentially coming from our farmers and the natural resources from our earth, right, that are going to be able to help us provide this. And so by 2050, and we talked about this, that it requires that equivalent of all the food that we've grown in the last 500 years put together. So that is a lot of food. So do you guys think though, can farmers today take the same land that they're using, soil, seeds, and water, the same equipment, and double their crop from one year to the next? Do you think they can do that? Do you think that's possible? What do you guys think?
They can. Like,
so I think you were saying that hesitantly, which is why you think they can, but
because they just have to
So there's some limitations though, right? On what they're able to do. And the limitations we're going to learn are in that sustainability barrel that you saw in that video. So if they wanted to, there's going to be some to double that crop. It's going to either cost too much, they won't have the land, or there's those different differences in that sustainability barrel that will allow them to or not to be able to increase that. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that. Right. So we have our economic, so the financial reasons, as well as the social reasons. So that's that other sustainability part to be able to do this, and then to have other generations continue to feed the world, and then the environmental reasons as well. Okay. So your economic factors are your profitability, the jobs, the income that you're making in the community that's around there. Now, the social factors in that social part of the barrel, those are things like the food, the education, your infrastructure, your healthcare, and things like that as well. And then we have the last part of our sustainability barrel being the environmental factors. So that's your soil health, that's the habitat, that's the water, your greenhouse gases. All of these are going to affect whether farmers are able to produce more food. So ultimately, you can only produce as much as your most limiting factor of that barrel, right? And you're going to see this when you play the game. And it really helps you understand when you're playing the game, well, you can only do so much if you're as much as your limiting factor. So you're always trying to improve that lowest part of your barrel. Okay. So I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to let you guys do the introduction, the level 1. So if you go to, and I'll show you on here, if you go to journey2050.com, if you guys can see that, if you go to journey2050.com, you can open up another web browser on your computer or whatnot, and then you click play the game up here in the upper right corner. You don't need to have a teacher login. You can skip over that and just play the game. And if you guys play level 1, then we'll resume and we'll start chatting about how things went for you, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of our environmental factors in that. Okay. So I'll give you about, I want to make sure I get through everything. Let's give you 2 to 3 minutes to try and play the game. And you can see as you're playing, you'll learn how to play it, and you'll start to see a sustainability score. So I want you to go through level 1, and then we'll continue from there. Oh, so if you go on another web browser and go to journey2050.com, and then up in the right, here, I'll show it on the screen. Oops. Journey2050.com, and then this is in my way. How do I get that out of the way? There we go. There's a play game right here in the upper right corner. If you hit that, you don't need to worry about entering a teacher code or anything. You can skip through that, and the game should pop up for you. So you can just play using one of your web browsers. How's everyone making out?
My brother and I are loading into the game right now.
Okay, perfect.
I'm not doing good. My Wi-Fi is bad, so it's not really downloading. It's just going really slow.
It's just going slow. I'll give everybody a couple more minutes.
Yeah, because
and-
our Wi-Fi is not.
Yeah, and it might be something that after we get through the presentation, it might be easier to play without the Zoom going on too at the same time, probably. Because I know mine can be that way as well. And I'm need another minute, or do you want? How is everyone doing? I don't want to rush you if you're just sort of in the middle of the level.
My brothers and I, we used our phones and they won't work, and my mom's tablet is too old to play the game on.
Oh,
So
shoot.
can I just skip through this? It's not working at all.
Yes, we'll just, you guys just don't worry about that until after then, and you can try.
I would just say I got a score 10. My thing is still very My thing is still very, very slow.
Okay, that's okay. I'll maybe
Should I
I'll
just go onto the website?
yeah, it's
Like, should I just go to the Journey 2050?
yeah,
Should I
like
just go to Journey 2050?
yeah, you can play it just on your web
Should I
browser
just go on?
to download.
Okay.
Yeah, you can play it just on a web browser and not have to download the game if that works. That's how I my kiddos do it too, so I don't download the game there.
You didn't have to download it.
Well, I wanted to.
So I just want to touch base then on the barrels. You'll find as we were talking about those limiting factors, right? And we can also look at them as challenges, essentially, right? Those are the challenges that we face
Climate.
for more people, right? So as we see those challenges, we know that water is going to be a challenge. We know having that available land is going to be a challenge. Climate is going to be a challenge. All of those things are going to be challenging, as well as
Human factors.
and as we go through things that way too, right? So these are all things that if we want to look at too, is not only just limiting factors, but they're a challenge. And what do we do with challenges? We try and face them and figure those challenges out. So yeah, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna move on to kind of level 2 here. Even if you're not done level 1, that's okay. We can come back to it, and you guys can go back and play this at any time as well, right? And you're gonna go through, as you go through the different levels, you're gonna go through the different countries, which is really cool, getting to see the families farm in Kenya and India, in Canada and the US, and see how their different practices that they're using and the different community investments that they can make as well. So it's really cool and super important, as it said in that video, to look at that ripple effect and understand that agriculture is kind of the foundation, right? Where we grow our food, and how soil is our key foundation to growing food for everything. And how, because of that, and the ripple effect that has, that goes out through our economy, not only locally, but globally as well. So there's a lot of important things that are happening as we make these investments in soil health, to produce better crops. And that way we're going to earn more money, but then we can make these and other investments down in things like community things like roads, and allowing people to travel easier, improving access to different markets and labor. So it has this huge ripple effect that goes out. So it's really cool to learn and understand about this. Okay, so I'm going to go on to level 2, and we're going to talk about how much of the Earth's surface is ideal for growing crops. So if I were to ask you guys, what percentage do you guys think is available to produce crops in the world, the whole world today? How much do you think that would be? Throw out a number for me. What percentage do you think of the Earth's surface is ideal for growing crops? Do you guys have an idea? 20%. Okay, yeah. Any other guesses? 30%? 25%? Awesome. 50%? Cool. All right, all great. So now I'm going to ask you one more question. When we look at the world, and you guys might have learned this in some science classes, how much of our world is composed of water? How much of the Earth's surface is covered in water? Do you guys remember that from some of your science classes? Did they talk about how much of our Earth's surface is covered in water? 3/4, yeah. Any other guesses? Whoops, now it's clicking on me again. And it's still clicking on me again. There we go. So yeah, oh, I'm just submitting to here. So 3/4 of our world, of the Earth's surface, is covered in water. So almost 75%. And that number is kind of what they've been using. So if we were to take an apple, and usually I have some apples, but my kiddos had them for lunch today, so I don't have any apples to show you. I would kind of cut the apple and show you physically. But if you look at the picture, you can see, so 3/4 of our Earth is covered in water. So we can't farm anything on that. And then you look at this chunk right here. I just gotta move this off my screen here. Then you look at this, there's a chunk in here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. This is land that is not agricultural, not used for agriculture. So it's our urban centers. It's used for houses, roads, parks. That big chunk of land is not farmable acres, right? Then we have this other chunk of land in here, and that is basically, that's the inhospitable land. So that's our mountains, that's our polar regions, our ice caps, our deserts. That land is not capable of growing for farming, right? So we have to take that chunk out. So what we're left with on our Earth's surface is this really small sliver here, right? So only 8% of the Earth's surface is used for agriculture. And then this can be broken down further into, there's a chunk of that that's used for different things like feeding livestock. And then we go down to the actual arable land piece. It goes down to almost 2 to 3% is all that we are able to farm. Now, as we go through, you're going to see these chunks where the urban, as we see the urban sprawl go out. So that chunk of arable land that we use to farm on is going to get even smaller, right? So it's something to kind of put in perspective so you guys can see, like I said, the limiting factors we were talking about in our barrel. This is where we're going to start to see how this is a big challenge, right? So we can look at this as our challenge and what we're going to do to overcome these challenges. And it's going to take your guys' great young minds in the future of how we're going to do that, right? So things like, and I saw somebody had typed in the chat earlier when I was talking about how we do this, is technology, right? technology and innovation and best management practices are going to allow us to feed this growing population that we're going to be seeing, right? So here's another diagram as well that talks about, as you can see, that the land and why it's so precious to us, right? This is showing the land that we have and that is very heavily populated, right? So this is where we see we're very populated in these parts of India and China. So the darker parts are where it's more heavily populated. The lighter parts of the world, you can see that's where it's less populated. So you can look at Canada and look at Alberta. We're not as darkly populated here as, say, like in India and China. And you can see parts of the states that are a little more heavily populated, but you can see in certain spots. Here in Alberta and Canada, we're in the lighter, less populated. So, but this is what's still part of our challenge and why our land is such a precious resource. As urbanization takes more and more land, it decreases that amount of land that we have available, right? So this is something that we have to, again, figure out and how we're going to do this. So here's a great picture of our world again, showing us what are the acres that were used for pasture land, right? So the pasture where the animals are grazing, and then the cropland is you'll see in orange. Now some of this is a little bit more, you know, you can see some parts of orange and green that are smaller that you can't quite see on this picture, but it gives you an idea of the land that is used for pasture land and cropland. That you can see within our world, and that precious resource that we have. Sorry, I just want to be mindful of our time here. So again, you can see India and China again being the heavily densely populated areas, and India does have some cropland that they can use there as well. So again, like I mentioned, technology, innovation, our best management practices, which I'm going to talk about in a few slides to help us feed this growing population. So the second part of our lessons here are talking about plant health and why it's so important. So as you know, you can picture this cup and it's full of water, right? And it's full of all the nutrients that we have. So when we go and we grow a crop, that water is going to go down. So those nutrients are going to go down in order to feed that crop, right? But what happens? How do we continue to grow a crop if all the nutrients are depleted from this year's crop, right? So it's important that we learn to understand that we have to continue to fill that cup up with nutrients and water. So think of your fridge, right? What would happen when you eat all the food out of your fridge? If nobody goes and puts groceries in your fridge, you're not going to be able to get the nutrients you need, right? So you can also think of it like that to help you understand. So if nobody fills my fridge, I'm not going to have the food that I need to keep going. Okay, I'm going to show you this next video, and I'm going to try and speed up a little bit here because I'm a bit behind. Oh, I had to mute.
Need them to produce.
There we go.
Nutrients are essential. We need them to produce food. They provide energy and support the growth and maintenance of our bodies. Without adequate nutrients, people become malnourished and cannot protect themselves from disease. We get our nutrients from plants and animals through the food we eat. Animals get their nutrients from the plants they eat, and plants take nutrients from the soil and elements from the air. Plants require 17 essential nutrients. The primary nutrients are nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, and potassium, K. Each nutrient does many things for the plant, but the basics are this. Nitrogen is often called the builder. It is necessary for chlorophyll synthesis, which helps the plant stay healthy, green, and strong. Nitrogen helps make plant proteins as well. Phosphorus is referred to as the enforcer. It helps the plant trap and use the sun's energy to make food through photosynthesis. Plants also need phosphorus to grow healthy root systems. Potassium is often called the protector. Potassium protects our plants against diseases and helps them stay healthy when it is cold or dry because it helps move nutrients and water in the plant to where it's needed most. We may not realize it, but the soil beneath our feet is a vibrant source of life and nutrients. Soil is home to lots of living and non-living materials. This includes rocks, minerals, bacteria, and countless insects and organisms so small you need a microscope to see them. It takes a long time to make soil. As rock crumbles and erodes, the minerals mix with the organic material from the remains of plants and animals that decay over time, creating nutrient-rich soil. Soils are like a bank where nutrients and water are stored. Plants get the nutrients they need from the soil through their roots. If these nutrients are not replaced through the use of fertilizer and organic material, the bank is depleted and the soil will slowly become less fertile. Nutrient-deficient plants show symptoms like turning pale yellow in color and have poor growth. They're less able to compete with weeds, resist plant diseases, insects, or drought. These plant health-related problems may result in less food grown with lower nutritional value. Let me tell you about best management practices. Developed from science and experience, they're used to prevent soil depletion, improve production on current land, and make sure farmers aren't forced to move on to new fertile land elsewhere. As a result, more natural habitat is preserved. Best management practices range from simple planting of shelter belts or hedge trees to reduce soil erosion to more technical practices like the use of global positioning systems for the precise application of nutrients. Best management practices will be different depending on where you farm, but each practice allows farmers to do more with less. To maximize sustainability, farmers use best management practices such as the 4R nutrient stewardship system. First, farmers test the soil to find out what nutrients soil needs, and then they select the seeds that will grow best in the area. Next, they can use the 4R nutrient stewardship system to precisely apply the nutrients required to grow a healthy crop. Farmers start with the right source to determine the correct combination of nutrients. Then they figure out the exact amount the plant needs. This is the right rate, not too much and not too little. The nutrients must then be applied at the right time of year and the right place in the field to increase crop uptake. Take a look at how the 4R nutrient stewardship system can help farm families. For example, in Kenya, farmers carefully apply fertilizers, plant material, or manure near the plant's roots using the 4Rs. Here, the nutrients are being applied on the surface, so they are at risk of being lost to the environment. Too many losses can cause negative impacts on the air, water quality, and habitats. In the long run, it's not sustainable. That's why best management practices like the creation of riparian areas and the use of the 4R nutrient stewardship system are so important. They can improve crop yields, increase soil quality, increase farm profits, and protect habitats. You will have the opportunity to help your farm families use best management practices to improve sustainability. Remember the sustainability barrel. Be thoughtful with your choices. And always keep in mind that every decision has more than one impact on sustainability.
All right. Okay. I'm just going to jump back. I wanted to also, I didn't, oops, and it's not going to let me. There you go. To the maps that I was showing you. So this one again, I just wanted to, I forgot to make this connection for you. My apologies. So this again was showing our where it's more densely populated in the world. So like we said, we can see in China and India how densely populated it is in some of the other areas of the world. But then you can also see, because they're more heavily populated, India, like I said, has this great vast resource of great cropland, but we're losing that resource because of the population, right? So because of that sprawl of people spreading out on there. So it's one of those things. So if we were to be able to overlap those maps, you could see where those heavily populated areas are, and they're taking up some of our precious land and resources. So I forgot to mention that. So So going back to our nutrients, so you started to learn, you know, what are the three primary nutrients? Can anybody type those? Do you guys remember what were the three primary nutrients that they talked about in that video? Nitrogen was one, you bet. What was another one? Can you guys remember? Phosphorus, yes, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Yes, that is correct. So those are our three major nutrients. Plants actually require 17 nutrients to grow, but those are the three primary nutrients. And without those, and without all of the micronutrients as well, plants are not able to combat the disease and the pests and do as well as they could, right? So like they use the analogy of a bank. So if that person kept using and growing their crop, it was depleting all those nutrients. So that's why farmers have to go in and replenish those nutrients every year. And sometimes if they don't put enough of the nutrients in, they're still going to have some weaker plants that aren't going to fight the disease as well. So, whoops. There. So why is our soil so important, right? Soil is the basis of everything that we grow and we eat. And it also feeds all of our livestock too, right? That also provide us with more food like our meat and our milk and our eggs. So it is the basis of everything. And it's so important to have healthy soil in order to have healthy crops and healthy animals. Just put this down. So that's the other thing we want you to understand is the importance of soil. And we're going to talk about, where our nutrients come from as well. So the three primary nutrients, we talked about that being nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And this is kind of an example of what it would look like if you were to see it being put into one of the big seeding machines that farmers use. And this is what they actually look like. And we talked about the bank. And what I want to get to here is, where do these nutrients come from? So where do the plant nutrients actually come from? And there's a couple different things here that we're going to learn about. Obviously, they actually all come from nature. And it's something that a lot of people have a misunderstanding about, but they all come from nature. So there's two different sources. We have some organic and we have inorganic fertilizers, right? So the organic fertilizers are those things like manure, and things that were once living, sources that were once living, right? So manure, green crops, and compost, those are all sources of organic type of fertilizers. Whoops. And then our inorganic fertilizers are still actually coming from natural mineral deposits in the earth, right? So these are these big natural mineral deposits that we find within our earth, and then we mine them and process them into a source that plants can absorb. And that's how we end up with our different fertilizers. So why is this so important in terms of a plant's health, right? So how does that affect the overall plant's health and their ability to resist the disease and pests that they have to deal with, right? Why is this so important? What do you guys think? What would be so important? And how do you think that affects that plant's health? It talked about it a little bit in the video there. You guys remember? To grow, yeah, you bet. Any other thoughts? Oops. So let's look at it if we look at it like a person. So if we look at a person, which person is more likely to get sick if exposed to the same contagious illness, right? So we have a person here on the left who eats a balanced diet, exercises, is in overall good health. Then the person on the right doesn't eat maybe as good of a diet, doesn't really exercise, or is in generally less healthy than the other person. Which person do you think is going to get sick if exposed? The one on the left or the one on the right? Yeah, whoever raised their hand, go ahead.
The one on the left.
The one on the left. Oh, now it's not. There we go. Whoops. Let me go back. Sorry, it's going ahead, not back. Yeah, so it's that person that hasn't eaten that great of diet, not really in good health. They're more likely to get sick. And it's the same with plants, right? So if the plant doesn't have the proper nutrients and great soil and doesn't have all of those good things, that plant is more likely to get sick. So it's the same thinking when we think about our plants as well, to help us understand that. So when we look at our what can make a plant sick or destroy a plant, there's a few different things that can happen. So one, of course, we can have the problem of insects. So insects can come along, and you can see they can make spots. They can start to help kill plants as well and eat plants. And it is not good for the plant. So that can either make the plant very sick or literally destroy the plant, okay? Another problem is diseases. Just like there's diseases with people, there's plant diseases as well. So this is an example of a diseased plant. You can see all the spots and stuff. So that plant is not going to be a healthy plant, and it's not going to grow, and it's not going to produce a lot of crop, okay? Then we have what we've been talking about is those nutrient deficiencies. So say I haven't replenished all those nutrients in that soil and I haven't provided it with enough nutrients, it's going to look sickly and it's going to be a weaker plant, right? And again, it's not going to produce the amount of food that we need it to produce. And then another one that can affect the plant's health is, of course, weeds. So we've got the bug infestations, we've got diseases, we've got nutrient deficiencies, and then we can have weeds that can basically, they can come in and they can overtake and they can suck up all those nutrients, and not the plant, the crop that we're growing isn't getting enough of those nutrients because the weeds taking over, right? And they can shroud them out and put them in the shade and make it not a great environment for plants to grow. So these are some of the things that can really destroy a plant, make it really sick and not do very well. So this is why it's so important that we need to make sure that the plants are able to resist those pests. So we use different management practices that you saw in the video, all those different management practices where we can help those plants resist those pests and insects, resist the disease, and then not have as much human intervention. So then those plants are going to grow really vigorously, and they're going to come up fast and outgrow those weeds. And then they're going to produce more food, right? Which is what this is all about, is being able to produce more food to feed the world. So now, because we have some choices though when we're doing this, there's some different degrees, and that's where you're going to find when you're playing the game. You're going to see as you're playing the game, you'll see what choices affect the amount of crop that you're going to harvest, right, and come out with. And again, that's going to affect your sustainability barrel, where you are in your economy. Was that a profitable year? So obviously there's some poor choices, there's some good choices that you can make, but we want everybody, all the farmers, making the best choices, right? So that's why those 4R nutrients, right rate, right time, we want farmers making those best management choices, okay? So we call it the best management practice. So it's the best way to do some things. So can you think of some things that you saw from the video? What were some of those things that you guys saw in the video that were best management practices? Can you guys remember any of those? Quiet? No? So some of them were, as I mentioned, so applying the right amount of fertilizer at the right time, right? And basing it on what they knew the soil needs, the plants need. Crop rotation, that's a great one as well. And then making sure that we're monitoring that. We're never applying too much that's going to leach down. Remember the video where it would leach into? We're not applying too much of that, of one thing. So making those great choices and those best management practices are so important. So that's the 4R nutrient stewardship, right? So right source, right time, right rate, and right place, right? This is the important thing when we're applying those nutrients, right? So based on what the crop needs, right time at when the crop needs it, and right rate, not too little, not too much, and obviously at the right place, right? So it's so important that we do that. This is just a picture to show you guys the difference in, here's the crop here. You can really see the difference in where we haven't put any nutrients in the soil. And this is one where we've managed it with those best management practices, the 4R nutrients, the 4R nutrient stewardship. You can see the crop's so much larger and healthier. Whereas this one you can see is just not as good, right? So, this is why those manufactured fertilizers are so important, and they're responsible for over 50% of our world's food supply. So this is a really great picture to show you the key difference in that. Okay, so I was just about, yeah, we're just about here at the end. So this is where we're going to end for today at the end of level 2. Next week we're going to go on to some of the other levels, and we're going to play the game and learn about some cool stuff next week as well. Hopefully as you're playing, you guys can remember your scores, your sustainability score from your barrel, but hopefully you guys get a chance to play the game. As I said, there's some really cool prizes that you can enter for after the presentations. There's some really cool Nutrien swag that you can enter for, or you get to enter, and I'll show you 1 second here. Oops. So last year, you guys got an opportunity, if you were a part of this last year, to go to the Fort Saskatchewan nitrogen facility. This year, Nutrien's offering a tour of their Carsland nitrogen facility. So some really cool tours that you can get and participate in as one of the prizes as well. You have the option to choose whether you want to enter for Nutrien swag, or depending on where you're located, because you have to get there, a tour of the Carsland facility. Does anybody have any questions for me right now? Comments, questions?
What level do we stop on?
I would like you to not go past level, well, bear with me 1 second. I believe it's 6. Hang on 1 sec here. Oops. Don't go past level 6, please, before next week. If you guys continue on through level 3 and 4 and 5, that's great. You don't have to. If you haven't completed those levels by next week, you don't have to participate or anything like that. But we're going to go through some discussion on level 6 and 7. But I hope you guys enjoyed this evening. Thank you all for joining me. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great evening.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm leaving. Do I just click leave?
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.